We welcome in our 1320 Kings insider and creator of the Kings Beat, James Ham. James, always great to have you here with us. Did you watch any preseason football last night?
It was on in the background for a little while. Yeah, I don't love watching preseason football, especially if you play fantasy. It's like it's such fool's gold.
Hmm.
You get all excited about somebody, and then next thing you know, they make it to the regular season. They're on the practice squad the whole season, or they get cut, or you watch somebody go down and get an injury, and you're like, oh well, there goes
No.
that.
I think
So
James just took a shot at my love of Keon Ellis. I think that's what he just did. He just took a shot at my love of Keon Ellis. That's what it
What's
was.
what's what's I don't know if I want to say worse, but we'll say what's worse to watch, preseason football or basketball?
oh, football for sure.
Yeah, I think football too.
Yeah, yeah,
Let's not
because
let's not pretend like preseason basketball is good, but I definitely think it's football.
yeah, but preseason basketball is like so much better than summer league. And
Very
when
true.
you're like 10 or 12 deep on your offensive linemen that are running out there and they just aren't any good, and bad things are happening the whole time. I guess the one thing about preseason football is you see a bunch of guys get hit really hard.
Mm.
And if you're into that, like the old school football, it's all the tryhards running out there and crushing people.
Mm.
So I guess you do get that out of preseason football. But overall, I just think it's a really poor brand of football. And I also don't like that, the real players, if they play at all, they'll play a quarter. I'd like to see some guys get some flow. I think preseason basketball, that is one thing. You have at least one or two games where guys are really going for it and
Mm.
trying to get ready and trying to build chemistry for the regular season. So, yeah. And someone says in Chatty House, spring training baseball is the best. That is totally 100% correct. Like going down to Arizona for spring training is an absolute blast.
They
It's a
play too many
lot of fun.
games though. They be playing for the whole month. Like what? What? Think about if we had preseason football every day for a month. What?
Yeah.
That don't make
No,
no
I,
sense.
I mean, baseball season's 162 games. It's ridiculous. I mean, and then you tack on all the spring training games, and you're probably up around 190 games, 185 games by the end of it all.
Mm.
That's a lot of baseball. I get that, but it's still, if you go down there, it's a good time because everywhere you go out to a restaurant, a bunch of players come in. It's kind of a cool vibe. Everyone is
Mm.
there for one thing, and you got people jumping from one stadium to the next. It's so hot, it's ridiculous typically, but outside of that, I think it's a good representation of what you're going to see in going into the regular season.
We were talking to Trista Crick a couple of minutes ago, and
Uh-oh.
we had a conversation. We were talking about Minnesota, and well, the bigger conversation was about trades and how what general managers are looking for has just gotten kind of ridiculous, and trying to top this Rudy Gobert trade is absurd. And I think you and I had a conversation about this, how the Rudy Gobert deal, at least in my eyes, made complete sense. Like I totally understand what Minnesota is going for, but that led to a discussion where Tristan and I are kind of in on Minnesota and thinking they could potentially have that jump. And I've used the line like I could see Minnesota being this year's version of the Memphis Grizzlies. I could see them take another 10-game jump and being up there around 2 or 3 or something like that. Kenny wasn't sold on that. Where do you stand on Minnesota? And then we'll try to shape out the rest of the conference here.
Yeah, I think they're a boon or bust team. I think they could be a 3 seed, but I also think that they could have an absolute bad mix of players again and fall apart and be a 10, an 11. I'm not convinced. Again, I think Anthony Edwards is going to be a star. And I just wonder if if the two big guys are going to get in the way, and if D'Angelo Russell's going to get in the way, and if giving up Patrick Beverly and his leadership and his toughness is going to hurt that team, and I think it will. And so, I think you can either take a major leap, and all of a sudden they've got something special, or I could see them falling back pretty hard. Gobert has never played with a big man like that. A guy like Derek Favors has never played the game the way that you see from Cat. And so I don't know how that pairing is going to work. And I just worry that it's going to clog the middle and cause a bunch of problems. And, you have defensive stoppers in this league that are just so impactful. And Gobert is that, to some extent, because he is one of the great shot blockers in the game and he can really control the paint. But he doesn't get out on the perimeter. And the modern NBA is nothing but a bunch of 3-point shooters.
Mm-hmm.
And I really do think that team is strangely constructed. But maybe I'm wrong. That could just be like kismet, and they could have something, and everyone's going to be like, holy cow, look how good they are. I struggle with it a little bit as far as the fit, and I think that there isn't like a middle ground. I don't. Either you went all in on Gobert, 4 first-round picks, which is astronomical for, an all-star.
What were they going to do with younger? What were they going to do by keep adding, continuing to add younger players?
Well, I get you there, but I think that there are different players you could have added. And that's it. That's the thing for me. Like, if you go ahead, Kenny.
I was just gonna say I wouldn't have pulled that card for Gobert. I would have kind of waited around until, and this is the guy they thought was worth it. So that's fine. But I would have waited and held on to that King's ransom for a different player.
Yeah,
whenever they came up available, it could have been this offseason or next off, whatever. But whenever they became available, I would have done it for somebody else.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at, and even like, would Donovan Mitchell have been a better fit there next to Ant-Man? I think they could play next to each other. I think you could ask Mitchell to be more of a distributing point guard. And again, I just think that there are other deals that could have come up that you look at and you go, okay, that would have made more sense. But that's just me. I mean, the modern NBA has gone away from the 2 big man thing. Cleveland is trying to bring it back. A couple of other teams might try to bring it back as well. I mean, we might see a lot of it from the Kings this year, where they have 2 centers on the court with Rashawn Holmes and Domantas Sabonis all the time. But that's just not the trend. You're bucking a trend, and you're hoping that Karl Anthony Towns can now become a perimeter defender and be really good at it, which he hasn't been in the past. So, yeah, I just think it's interesting. And I think it's not just the 4 picks you gave up. I think you gave up a lot of valuable depth, and it sort of diluted your roster. And we'll have to see how they figure it out. Can Kyle Anderson be like an impactful player? I mean, that, again, wasn't that team fast before? It's not fast anymore. Wow. And that to me is like, if you're going to completely change the play style, that's going to be interesting to watch.
Yeah, I could see them. I see all scenarios with them, to be honest with you. I see them going up higher in the standings the way Damian does. I could see them. I guess I can't see them falling back, so it's not all scenarios. I could see them being around the same thing. I think they were 7th seed last year. Maybe they're not in the play-in. I think they're like a 5-6. I could see that being the case, but I don't see them like not being a playoff team. I guess so. It's just those 2 scenarios that I see. I don't see them falling back.
Yeah, I just looked. They were number 1 in the league in pace last year, and then you just added a really slow small forward and a really slow center.
Can you see what Utah was?
Yeah, I can check. And the reason I bring sort of the pacing up is, I think
because we're in Sacramento and we've been obsessed with pace for like 3 years.
Well, yeah, but I also look, and if they're number 1 in pace, you start to get that sinking feeling that they kind of pulled a smoke and mirrors trick. Yeah, Utah was 22nd in pace last year.
Ooh.
So,
Okay.
you know what I'm saying? I kind of get the vibe that you had a team that ran like Dave Yeager's squad and, put up 39 wins in Sacramento. Everyone's so excited. And he kept saying, like, look, we don't know how to play basketball, so we're running like crazy people. And then they back that up the next year and they slow it down. And I don't know how that transition will work because, Anthony Edwards, like, in transition is just absolutely incredible. So how are you gonna do some of what you did last year that made you so good, and at the same time you're going to be dragging around a couple of pieces? So I think they lost quality depth. I think that they completely changed the like the look and the feel of the team. And Gobert has never been like a leader guy. So where does this go? How does this work out? And, can you add one player and make a team good defensively? And we'll see, because you also lost one of the great perimeter defenders in the game in that transaction.
I'll push back on that one though, Ham. I don't think Beverly's nearly the defender he was. Like this was the thing that we always talked about with like the Davion Patrick Beverly comparison. I think Davion is a he was a great defender in college, but he has the potential to be a great defender in the NBA. I think Beverly just works hard. Like I don't know if he's necessarily that good. Like because when you think of it, he would go up against these guys. Obviously, we're talking about the best ever, but like Steph, and when he would guard James Harden when he was with the Clippers, he get cooked. He would get cooked, but he works really hard. Like he can't be deterred. In the bubble, he was unplayable. They couldn't put him out there. So
Yeah, I mean, I've looked at the stats on synergy. Maybe not this last year's stats, but like overall,
mhm.
and Beverly is phenomenal. Like in most defensive categories. I remember looking at his second year in the NBA to really match it up with where Davion and him really kind of were, because he came from overseas. He didn't really play in his first season, and his second season and Davion's first season, he was Patrick Beverly was way better than Davion, way better. It was like, but it wasn't so astronomical. It was like 82nd percentile to 90th percentile. You get to the next season, and Pat Bev's third season, but really his second season of actually playing in the NBA. And he was like the 95th percentile in the NBA of all defenders. And like isolation, it's like 99%. I mean, he's one of the best defenders that you're going to find in the game. So I get you, but there's also the toughness, the mentality that he brings to the table. And maybe he helped other players learn some of that. But I just go back to the Jimmy Butler situation with that team, where they had a guy like that with that type of personality who was a much better player. But the second you lost him, that team went to hell in a handbasket and wasn't even part of the conversation anymore for a couple of years with the same basic talent all the way around them. You're still talking about Cat. You're still talking about, really high quality players all around them. And, they sunk last time. So we'll have to see how it works out. Of all teams, that would be the one I would circle and say it's either it works or it doesn't. And not only that, if it doesn't work, we talked about this, like maybe a week or two ago. If it doesn't work, it's not like you traded for Donovan Mitchell. You traded for Rudy Gobert, which,
Yeah,
half
it's
the
going to be a
teams
tough move. Yeah.
half the teams in the league aren't looking to add that guy. So the
Yeah.
problem that you have there is getting back your 4 first round picks. That ain't happening.
Yeah.
You're not getting that back. You might get 1 or 2 back, but you're not getting the rest of them. And that's where, like a trade for Mitchell it's a trade that if it doesn't work out, he's still under contract for 3 years. A year and a half from now, you trade him, you're going to get equal to or more than what you gave for him in the first place.
Welcome to the T-Wolves beat with James.
Yeah.
You brought up Davion. The Davion Pat Bev comparison. If Mike Brown gasses up Davion in practice, like he's kind of doing, like it kind of felt like he was doing at that press conference and in subsequent media availability, and I think Davion might be a whole different type of vibe this year. I think he's going to come in ready to crack some heads.
I hope so. I think that's the player that he is like an ultra aggressive player. But I think the one thing that separates him from Patrick Beverly is that Patrick Beverly has this personality that just shines through at all times. And Davion is very quiet. And getting that out of Davion, we saw a couple of times last season where he was saying stuff to teammates. I'm hoping that he can take that leap and start being more assertive, as far as the way that he speaks to his teammates. But also, there's an edge to Patrick Beverley when he's defending somebody. He's one of the biggest trash talkers in the game, but he's also, he's always on like that razor thin line of being dirty and just being really aggressive. And I don't know that Davion has that. I think Davion tries to do a lot of things within the confines of, the officiating. He does try to draw a bunch of charges, but he tries to outwork you the whole time, and I totally get that. Where Patrick Beverley does that, and he's trash talking, he's getting under your skin the whole time. And so if Davion's got some of that in him, I'd like to see it, because we didn't really see that last year. And clearly he can trash talk. Trista Crick has told us that. So I want to see him.
Indeed.
I want to see him trash talk on the court, because I do think that that's part of the style of player that he is.
Yeah. So I was talking to Damien earlier about the captain, Derek Jeter's documentary. And he had kind of a throwaway story for most. And what I got out of it wasn't even what the story was intended to be. But there was a scenario where David Wells was pitching, and three guys converged around a pop fly, and it dropped. And David Wells threw his hands out like this on the mound. And Derek came up to him in the dugout or after the game and was like, "We don't do that us here. Like, we don't do that." And I know it was Derek Jeter. I know at that time he had won maybe 2 championships already or whatever. But it was something as simple as that, where it's like, we don't do that here. And I equated that to what I would love to see in Sacramento from a Fox, from a Davion, from maybe a Sabonis even, where something is going awry. Who's the guy, or do they have a guy who will say, look, I don't know what you think has been going on in Sacramento or what we were doing in the past, but we don't do that no more. You know what I mean? Do you think that they have that guy there? You think Fox is that guy? Do you think Davion could be that guy? Is Sabonis that guy? Do they have that type of guy who will lay down the law in that fashion?
I hope so. But, the only time I remember like that guy coming in the door, surprisingly, was Kent Bazemore. Like that moment when Kent Bazemore came in, and him and Anthony Tolliver, after I think it was his second or third game, they pulled everybody in. They said, "Look, like, we've been watching you guys play for, all season, but the last couple of seasons, and you guys have a lot of talent. Like, what are you doing? Like, why can't you put it together? Like, let's get focused. Let's start focusing on the little things. Let's start doing our job to the fullest, and let's stop making excuses. Like, you guys shouldn't be this bad. We've been on the outside. We know how to game plan for you guys, and it's not that hard. Like, when there's a moment in every game where you guys start to teeter a little bit, and if we pop you in the mouth, you're done. Well, that can't be the way we're going to finish the season. Like, as those veterans stepped up and said, look, we're not going to do that anymore. So I'm hoping that guy is there, and I'm going to, like, I'll keep going to this. I think it's going to be Sabonis more than anyone. Sabonis is a tough dude, and he's not going to take stuff from people messing around. But I look at this specific roster, and I don't see the mess around guy. Like, if you're going to have an 8 or a 9-man rotation, I know the rotation. I know the guys that will likely play, and there's not a big time, goof around. They're relatively serious. They're ready to take big leaps in their progression. I think like Davion is a good example, but I also like Fox. Fox is tired of losing, and Kevin Huerter is coming here like with a mentality that this is a wide open opportunity for him to go from a 12-point a game guy to a 17, 18-point a game guy, and really get into the conversation of strong shooting guards in the league. And this is an opportunity for him. And I think if you look around, Keegan Murray is not that guy. There isn't a lot of guys on this team that you got to stick your foot up their rear end. And, the Kings historically have had all kinds of those guys. And like they had them last year, but they also had them like, from 2010 to 2016. Like there's always a guy on this roster that that was causing some sort of drama and everything else. I don't. This could be a drama-free season for the Kings, which would be the first one in years and years and years. But this could be one of those seasons where the focus is purely on let's actually achieve a goal. Let's stop talking about it. Let's actually do it. And I think that that's a good thing. You've got a kind of a no nonsense group.
I think it's the first. Sorry, Casey, go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask James if he remembered the play that I was talking about earlier because he mentioned Sabonis. And I don't know if you remember this random play. And I think he was boxing out Tristan Thompson. And he boxes out Tristan Thompson. There's two Kings on the side. The ball drops and maybe bounces twice. And then Sabonis is like still boxing him out, but Tristan's working hard. And I think Sabonis ends up getting a foul because he's just trying to fend him off. And immediately Sabonis says, "Hey, what are you guys doing? My job is to keep him off the boards. You come in and do your job. I'm doing my job. Do your job." And then he hit him with it. "Let's go." And that always stood out to me. And when you mentioned Sabonis maybe being that guy, that's almost a version of we don't do that here. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that play was on our end of the court where we sit. It was right by the visitors' bench. We're right up above that in the media seats. And I believe it was Davion and Chemezi. That's who I want to say.
For some reason, I didn't want to say it. I thought Freeport was a part of this. I didn't want to point because I wasn't 100% sure. But I remember
knew it was Davion for sure.
I remember us talking about this the day after it happened.
Yeah. Yeah, it's those moments. And, there's so many moments in a game where you can step up and say something to a teammate. You don't want it to fall on deaf ears. You don't want it to be all the time that you're the guy who's chirping at guys. But at the same time, somebody has to hold people accountable. We talk about this team talks about consistency. They talk about accountability. They talk about all these, words that like realistically, if you're watching on the court, you just keep thinking, yes, you're super inconsistent. Yes, there's no accountability. Where is the accountability? And so that's what you got. That's why I think having a guy like Mike Brown who's entering the first year of his contract, that's a huge deal. I think this team is primed to fall in line and allow him to be the leader. There are going to be leaders on this team, but he will be the leader. And he's going to set the standard. And if you don't want to play defense, if you don't want to do the little things, you're not going to play. And that's it. Like, we're going to see guys come in and out of the rotation, and it will strictly be about whether they play defense, whether they're playing the game the right way. And that's something that, like, a lot of coaches that have come through here, it's not that they didn't want to do that. It's that they didn't have the luxury of that a lot of the time. So, like, when you only got, like, 5 or 6 rotational players, or, I remember one season Dave Yeager looked at me and he said, is there one true NBA starter on my team? And I looked and I'm like, well, yeah, maybe. At this point, he's like, at this point in their careers, I think some of these guys will be starters. But I think it was like, you look out and George Hill's there, and you're like, okay, George Hill, but, a 35, 36-year-old Zebo or a 40-year-old Vince Carter, and then the rest of the guys were all super young, and you got what he was saying. Like, this team isn't that way. This team has a bunch of rotational pieces that would be on other teams, and so if you don't want to do your job, Mike Brown can go to the well and he can pull someone that maybe hasn't played in the league or hasn't been a major player for another team, and he can give them an opportunity because he knows they're going to listen to him. Even a lot of them played for him on the Nigerian national team. They know him, and they're going to listen. They're going to be there to push others and make others better. And so, yeah, I kind of like the vibe on the roster itself and how it's created this time around. Like how you got there, a little rocky and rough, but where you're at right now, it's a bunch of professional players, and that's a good thing.
You talked about this team avoiding the drama, and Casey talking about having that guy who can, hey, we don't do that here. I want to expand on that just a little bit, and we will with James Ham, our 1320 Kings insider, when we return here on ESPN 1320. Oh, there you go. I don't remember who that was. Oh, gosh, I don't even think I know that name. I know you're tired of being lonely, but baby girl, put it on me.
Oh, that was Vita.
Mm-hmm. Vita, that's right. Yeah. Vita.
Dodgeball is on.
Oh yeah.
How is it possible that monkeypox disproportionately affects the Black and Hispanic community already?
Mm. Mm.
What?
Yeah.
Well, that doesn't make any sense.
Well, that's what
That's
the
the latest?
CDC says. Yeah.
Jesus.
Over half of the cases are in Black and
Yeah.
Hispanic people.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's a coincidence.
Yeah.
What a coinky dink.
What a coinky dink.
The question is, what disease doesn't disproportionately affect the Black and Hispanic community?
Seriously. You know what I mean?
Come on, diseases. Be the first one that doesn't.
People want me to have Trista on
On
the
off the
King's
record.
Beat.
Oh, that would be.
That would be
on off the record would be.
Yeah, that would be dangerous. Dangerous. I never heard her buddy Hield story. So, she definitely cracks me up.
You didn't hear the Buddy Hield story?
Mm-mm.
You weren't with me. What was that? What was that last week? When did she tell that story?
She
told it last week. She told it last week.
Okay.
She said she asked us if we thought Buddy has been kind of a victim of the Sacramento Kings and the New Orleans Pelicans, and would his career trajectory be a little bit different if he had been drafted by like better teams? Mm-hmm. And we both said no. And she said she posed that question to an NBA player, if I remember correctly, and a general manager overheard her and said, "Oh, hell no." And then went on this long, I'll find the clip and send it to you. It's pretty entertaining and very on Buddy brand.
Yeah, like, and people think that I don't like. I enjoyed being around Buddy Hield. Like, there are plenty of players I enjoyed a lot less than Buddy Hield during my time covering this team. But at the same time, he was consistently inconsistent. He made the same mistakes time and time and time again. And he broke off offensive plays. He broke defensive stuff. Was like, he never had his head on a swivel. Like, he would look one way and the guy would run right past him. You'd be like, What in the world just happened? Or the back cut thing. Like, I know Luke had such a struggle with that. He's like, we get to January and all of a sudden every team in the league is busting him on the back cut. He's like, it's the same back cut coverage we've had for the last 2 years. Like, what are you doing? How can you all of a sudden forget how to do that? Right. And it really got under his skin.
I tried to get one of their assistant coaches to tell me he wasn't very bright, but that assistant coach wouldn't.
He's a nice
that coach
guy.
Just chuckled. No, I'm not saying he's not.
Yeah.
We're coming back, guys. Hang on. Black Rob right there. Ain't nothing wrong with that, man. We back in here with yeah, go ahead.
I found the play. That was almost phenomenal knowledge by the both of you guys. But it was Davion Mitchell. Mm-hmm. It's the bonus play I'm talking about. Anybody want to take a guess? It's not Freeport. Anybody want to take a guess on who the other player was?
Oh, I thought it was Freeport.
If it's not, it's Harrison Barnes. No? Really?
Mo Harkless.
Oh,
I wouldn't have guessed that.
Well,
I swore I thought it was
Freeport too.
Mo Harkless did a lot of yelling at his teammates.
Well,
He
Harkless
did.
provided a lot of
He did.
highlights this season by yelling at and then it's terrible. He wasn't yelling at teammates. He was yelling at a teammate.
A teammate.
He just yelled at that teammate a lot, which is kind of what made it funny. It's like
Yeah.
he never yelled at Freeport. He never yelled at anybody else. He just kept yelling at this one guy.
He had enough. Had enough.
I don't mean to pick on this dude. It's just so funny.
Yeah. It's tough. It's tough when you play. I mean, I think we've all played team sports, and you play with someone and they do the same thing wrong again and again and again, and everyone, how many times playing football did we have to run laps because the same guy kept doing the same thing? I watched a football coach rip a helmet off a kid because he wouldn't keep his mouthpiece in. He was told repeatedly in the same drill, don't take your mouthpiece out of your mouth. And finally, the coach had enough. The kid was dogging it back to the line, grabbed him by the face mask, and the guy had his chin strap on, ripped his helmet off his head with the chin strap still on, scratched the kid all up. The kid went off like screaming and yelling and like,
Steph Curry ruining football.
but like how many times? I mean, I think we've all been there. We've all seen it. Like a center fielder who, reads a bad ball every time, or won't get down for a grounder on a ball shot to center field, and you're like, hey man, how many times do we watch you running towards the fence going to pick up a ball that you should have just fielded cleanly and got back in for a single, and now we're trying to stop the guy from scoring a home run, like a little league home run on us. So I think we've all played with those guys, and you hope that you're not that guy,
but he's the frustrating guy on the little league team.
Yeah.
Oh, Shimano.
Schmuddy, by the way.
Schmuddy, yes, Schmuddy, of course.
We're not saying any names out here. It's
Round.
Schmuddy Field. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
frozen ham.
Oh, I came back. I came back quick.
Yeah, you did. You just a brief freeze. That's a flash frozen ham right there. That was
that's right.
Frozen ham.
Yeah.
Where was we Kevin Pelton put out some grades for the Western Conference. It was weird. He gave the Jazz an A, which is like, all right, man. Okay. The grade that seems to be almost universal for the Sacramento Kings, though, is a B. Good. So Jason Jones, The Athletic, good solid B. Kevin Pelton, ESPN, good solid B. James Ham, Kings beat. Grades Kings what?
I don't love doing grades. This is something that I fight with Vince Miracle on every year. I'll say this: if I were to give a grade for this offseason, I think it would be a B plus. I don't. I've said this many times. I don't like how they got to certain places, but I don't mind the outcome. And I think you've hamstrung yourself a little bit going forward as far as losing all the first round picks or access to the first round picks for all these years. But
can I stop you right there? I don't think that's as big of a deal as you think it is. Because actually, let me rephrase that. Is it a big deal because it hinders another trade?
Yes, it's a big deal because
that trade is coming.
Well, but it can't come. That's the problem. Like I see what you're saying.
Could it have come? Period. I mean, of course. Yeah. Theoretically, of course, it could have. But really, how often have the Kings packaged multiple picks for a year? Like the fact that this one was included on Kevin Huerter is a big deal.
No, I think it's a very big deal, but I also think it's a big deal that it's not including the 2023. It's a 2024 that's lottery protected, and people say, "Oh, well, they're going to give it up by then." That's fine. They're just going to give it up in that first year, but that's the next 2 years that you can't do anything with your draft picks at all. Like you can't even you can go out way further for sure. I just think it's tough. If you're gonna give up a first round pick at the NBA level, and you're going to tie up picks for for 5 seasons, you better be sure that that guy is really good. And Herder is a solid NBA player, but he's a player who's averaged 12 points a game the last 3 seasons. Like, he's got to be a lot more than that to make that deal worth it. And again, I think he can be, and I think he will be, but it's a gamble, and there's not something else you can do. And if you lose Harrison Barnes this coming off season, how do you replace that, especially if you still don't have access to any of your first round picks?
Well, do you applaud them at all for not trading this upcoming drafts pick?
Well, I mean, it just depends
Or
on what the deal was. Like, yeah, I mean, I would like to applaud them. I mean, do you mean the Keegan Murray pick?
No,
no, I mean
The
the
2023.
2023. Yeah,
Well, the
this upcoming
2023. Yeah, I mean, that's like running in the freeway right there. If you're gonna go trade the year 2023. I mean, this is one of the better drafts. It literally has like a couple of unicorns, and so
Yeah.
if you're gonna risk that, you better be really, really
You
sure.
better be running really fast on that freeway.
And we're talking about 16 years of thinking that you might have something, but you better be sure you got something.
Yeah.
And I'm still waiting. The reason why I can't do more than a B. I said B plus. Even that, I'm like, it's that there's still one more deal that you potentially could. Maybe there's a deal out there that could make me feel like, okay, this is a guaranteed playoff team. This still is not a guaranteed playoff team, and I think we can all agree at that. There are things that you like about it. There are things that you think can go really well, and this whole thing could work out. But it's a lot of hope that everything goes well, because we're still looking at the back end, the last 3, 4, or 5 players on this roster. How many NBA teams would they be on? And so you're banking on your top end, that top 8 or 9 is going to be good enough, and you got to hope that it will be. So yeah, it's
I,
tough.
I say they get an A, and it could be grading on a curve, but when I look at what they accomplished as opposed to like what they could have accomplished, like I thought he did about as good as you can do. They went out, they made a trade for a starter. They went out and signed a free agent that's a potential starter, and they drafted a guy that's a starter. And in Sacramento, particularly the free agent part, that doesn't really happen. Like a bona fide starter, they signed a free agent. Like that doesn't happen. We all know Dwayne Dedman wasn't really a starter. You know what I mean? He was, that was just a bad signing. Trevor Ariza wasn't a starter, wasn't a true starter. Like George Hill was probably the last one. I know the other guys, they were older. That doesn't count. Like he went out and did that. He got 3 starting quality players in this offseason. And yeah, there still may be another move to make, but considering the organization, considering the location, I don't think he could have done any better this offseason.
I think like the argument that I would make is we came into this offseason and I kept saying like they need 3 or 4 rotational pieces, right? I think I'm not going to give the starter like title to all of the picks that all of the players that they added. I mean, I think the argument can be made that Malik Monk he's had one good season out of his first 5 in the league, and it was last year on a really, really bad Lakers team. And so I hope that I think he is a top 8 of the rotation guy in the NBA. Whether I'm gonna like say he's a bona fide starter, no. But what I would say is that they gained 3 and they lost 1, and I would put Dante DiVincenzo and Malik Monk sort of in the same boat. They're top 8 of the rotation, but are they starters? Are they? And I think Keegan Murray's a starter. I think that Kevin Huerter's a starter. So I think you did at least, you added 3 pieces, you lost 1. You still need 1 or 2 more in order for this thing to work out fully. And I think I'm always gonna be cautious on the Harrison Barnes piece as well, just because like look, Harrison is going into free agency at the end of this year, and retaining him is going to be extremely difficult. And so that's one of those things where, like, you still have that looming, you still have that hanging over your head going into the season as maybe the one drama piece, but even that and the McNair situation, I would say, is a drama
What do
piece.
you mean you're going to be cautious? Like cautious in the way you evaluate it, in him still being here?
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. So yeah, I like what the Kings did, but like what we kept saying is, if they lose Harrison Barnes, this team needed 3 more Harrison Barnes. They didn't need just one or to retain the guy they had. They need multiples of that level of player, and I think they got 2 of those for sure. Now, did they may have got a third in Monk, but I'm still, even Herter, I have a hard time putting him on the same level as Harrison Barnes and at this point in his career. And that's, so yeah, you got better. This team is better. It's deeper. It's more talented. It's got a much better shot, especially this season, of reaching the playoffs. But they still are that one piece away from going, okay, you nailed it. And you kind of like spent all the bullets in your gun to get to where you are right now. Like there are a few bullets left, but it's got to be the right situation for somebody. It can't be like we've talked about. There's a big difference between dealing with a team like the Nets, who are still trying to compete, and dealing with a team like Utah. The Kings are basically at a point where they're more dealing with a team like Utah, and so you got to wait for some of those teams to happen in the first 30 games of the season for a team to totally fall off a cliff and go, okay, we're ready to move. We're going to start, looking for dump deals. And that's where I think the Kings can actually, start sort of make that one last move that they need to make.
And see, but that's kind of my thing, right? Like, yeah, you need 3 frontline starters and all. So it's, for lack of a better term, you don't have that type of bank account. Like, you're not the Nets or New York City, the Knicks with a bunch of assets and cap space. You don't have that. Like, you went into this with your best asset at one point being the number 4 pick, and then your second best asset was Harrison Barnes. You shopping at Ross like the rest of us. You know what I mean? And while you were at Ross, you found some good deals. You found, oh, this is nice. This little jacket right here, it's nice. It's snuck in here. That's
The
what
stitch is a little off on the right sleeve,
yeah,
just a little bit, but it's not really noticeable.
But it's nice though. It's not, I can rock this. Like, you come out of there like, I did pretty good. Yeah, I want the Mark Jones Gucci loafers, but I don't want to have that bank account. So
Yeah.
for what I had available to me in this aspect, for what Monty McNair had available to him, I thought he did a great job.
My only like sort of response is that I agree with you. I agree that they did a lot of good with what they had, but this is Sacramento, where free agency is not where you actually go out and get real. I mean, you can get a rotational player, but it's your Malik Monk, your Dwayne Dedman.
You're not getting the Louis bag.
No, you're not getting that, right? And so you're down to 2 things. You can trade, or you can draft the Louis V bag. You just gave up the ammo to actually trade. You gave up one of those picks, but you also gave up, control of 5 years, where you can't use that as one of the avenues to bolster a trade. And that, again, it's more of a nuance to it, but that's where I'm always going to have a little issue with this offseason. It's a really good offseason, but there's something that separates this from being great, and that is that, you're in check, but you're not in checkmate, but you're in check. And you gotta find ways to get out of check before, you can actually go on the offensive and actually make your own moves. And it's kind of a tough spot to be in. So
Harrison might not be a Louis bag, but he's like a good Toomey bag. Like
no, I think so too. Like
he's a high quality piece of luggage. Like he's a bag you're not in. Doug Christie has a Toomey bag. I know that. I know that for sure. It's got his initials on it. I know that for sure.
Is that the green one? Oh,
No,
he's got a nice
I think
green
it's a
bag.
black one.
Okay.
I can't remember. I can't remember the color.
Yeah.
But
Well,
point being, Toomey bags are really nice. It's not a Louis, it's not a Gucci, but it's a I feel like that's what Harrison Barnes is. I don't want to trade Harrison Barnes for a JanSport backpack.
look, if
What did JanSport to do to anybody?
and I'll say this, man, I totally agree. And if you can go sit down with Harrison Barnes right now and get him to ink a 2-year or 3-year extension, then I feel a lot better about the future of this group. Because then you're moving forward with this group. But that's kind of where you're at. Like, you've got to have pieces in order to make trades and all that stuff. And the fact that he can leave at the end of the year, it's like, okay, are you going to be one and done? Because what do you do this offseason? And if you somehow do make the playoffs this offseason, and I mean this season, and you walk into next summer and you're looking at, a 14, 15, 16, 17 pick as opposed to a top 10, then again, the value is different. And, we're not talking about the same type of value on the open market to go replace a guy like Harrison Barnes. A player in that like realm in the draft rarely steps in onto the floor and is an NBA starter on day one. So like you gotta look at this thing. It's not just this year. You got to look at multiple years out. And I know at some point you got to just go for it.
Mm-hmm.
But do you see the go for it move this offseason?
I don't know what the go for it move is right now, though, either. Like, I think that's where I keep getting hung up on it. And no shade to JanSport. It's a fantastic backpack, but it's not Gucci. It's not Louis. It's none of that. It's just a different form of reliability. I don't know what the move is where you go, because I think where we looked at all of these grades, reading what Jason wrote in The Athletic and what Kevin Pelton wrote, it's like, I don't know what they could have done different. I don't know what else they could have done. Perhaps more specifically, I know what they could have done different. I don't know what more they could have done.
That's my thing.
And that's why it's just like I'm a B is fine. I don't think it's worth. I don't know that you necessarily need to give them an A. I just you talk about that one more move, that one big go for it move. I don't know what it is.
Yeah. No, I don't know what it is either. I don't know what they have on the table behind the scenes. Again, I know that they continue to be aggressive even after the draft, after free agency. They still have things that they're looking at, but the league is stuck right now. They're stuck waiting to see what's going to happen with all of these messy situations.
Nothing is going to happen.
Yeah.
We're all sitting here watching paint dry right now.
Yeah.
Watching Dodgeball.
Hey, that's a no one makes me bleed. No one makes me bleed my own blood. Yeah.
Dodgeball, it's on right now in the home studio. I mean, damn, these guys are getting after it. And they have ladies. It's co-ed. They're getting after it.
That really does kind of speak to the legacy of the movie. As Kenny's talking about actual Dodgeball and James is referencing the movie, it really is incredible the lasting impact of that movie, that there is an ESPN The Ocho Day because of that movie.
Yeah. It's
bold
amazing
strategy, Cotton. We'll see if it pays off.
Yeah. No, I mean that's a good one. We've watched that here at the house. I saw that it was coming on the other day. I'm like, oh, am I going to watch this? Am I not? Yeah.
That's always an easy I got nothing else to do. I'll let the TV sit here. Yeah, that's an easy one to just let the. And the sad part is, I don't think he's canceled. The scene with Lance Armstrong is funny.
No, Lance he's not canceled.
I didn't think so.
For what he is, but he's not canceled.
Yeah.
Lance did what everybody else did. Just call it what it is. Like Lance did what his entire profession did. Yeah. He was just a giant jerk about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Very true.
But the scene at the end is great. Oh, no, I'm sure you've got a good reason for quitting. After laying out all of the reasons that he was away and how he came back. No, I'm sure you have a good reason for quitting, too.
Yeah. Good stuff.
Guess I'll go watch Dodgeball tonight. No, I got to watch The Captain tonight. That's what I got to watch.
You're gonna love The Captain.
I
And
can't do
James,
it.
I don't even think you're gonna like The Captain too.
Can't do
Although
it.
they have one part where they kind of get at your boy Eric Chavez, who was running his mouth before Game 5. I think
Yeah,
that was 0-1.
I think I was there.
Yeah.
Jeter makes the play at home plate. Yeah.
No, it was Game 5 where they asked Chavez,
yeah.
they're like, you're possibly putting an end to the Yankee dynasty. I think they won 2 in a row, and he goes, they've had enough. They've had enough winning. It's time for some new guys to get in there. Yankees put up 6 in the first inning.
Yeah. Oh yeah, not good, not good. Yeah, rough. It's one of those things. I can't forgive Kurt Gibson. I can't forgive Derek Jeter, especially I was there for the Jeter play at home plate. So
Well, get ready. We already said it right now. Get ready to call De'Aaron Fox El Capitan. He's going to be the captain this year.
El Capitan. I'm
all
with
right.
it. I'm with it. We appreciate you so much for being with us.